very warm welcome for this first session to each and every one present here, all the great writers, authors, people in the cultural sector. A very, very warm and hearty welcome to you. And I extend the same to Mr. Vijay Kumar,
Thank you.
who is amongst us. And it's a great honor. He's here all the way from Singapore. And I think the first question, Mr. Kumar, that rises in the minds of our audience as well as us is that how come from a shipping professional that you decided to expose international smuggling rackets?
Well, I was introduced to Indian art at a very young age by a book of fiction. It's a Tamil book called Ponniyin Selvan. It was written by a noted author called Kalki about 70 years ago, and it still remains the largest selling work of historic fiction in Tamil. And it was introduced to me by my grandmother, and I would say that I was bitten by the history bug. And for more of how I managed to get into being a vigilante, I frankly believe the gods have decided to come home. I'm just a vehicle to bring them home. Thank you.
So don't you think you should have been doing better at the Interpol or as a detective somewhere instead of in the shipping company?
I met a reputed author once, and when I told him I'm writing a book, he said, "What do you do for a living?" And I said, I'm in shipping. So I think the day job, I'm thankful, that pays for all these extravagances.
So he is at his job 24/7, ladies and gentlemen, a shipping professional by morning and a vigilante by night. So that's really wonderful. And could you please tell us something more about Poetry in Stone?
Well, it started by I telling a person that I will never write a book, because I felt that there was too much of works on Indian art, but they were written to a very, very advanced audience. What was required was a dummy's guide to art. Frankly, I was visiting a very important temple, and I found a father pulling his son along. The son looked at a very unique form of Shiva, Shiva Gangadhara, receiving the Ganges. The boy was asking his dad, as all inquisitive boys are, "Appa," or "Father, who is this?" The father said, "It's Vishnu." So I realized that there was a serious lacuna among our own people to know about an art form. So I decided to blog about it as a small effort. In essence, it's a dummy's guide to art. And I documented my learning journey as how I learned art on the social media.
So that's really a great endeavor by Mr. Kumar, because we see that art, history, literature, you know, it gets remained in books, in our books, our syllabuses, but it really never comes out. So this is something great that he is doing. So you started the India Pride project in 2013. So what do you do in that, and how has it been coming along?
Basically, this is an effort to restore India's pride. हमारे जो मूर्तियाँ हैं चोरी हो रही है, openly auction हो रही है, and we just don't seem to care. And this I found insulting. हमारा जो मूर्तियाँ हैं वो priceless है. To be seeing them to be reduced as showpiece curios hurt me and my team, and that's why we called it India Pride Project. Basically to show the world that हमारा मूर्तियाँ बिकने वाला चीज़ नहीं है. They are living gods.
That's really wonderful, because I think we all need to take pride in our heritage and every small thing that actually contributes to it. So that's really wonderful. And but when you come across the officials, when you come across the government, what do you feel about their laid-back attitude, you know, in really getting our treasures home?
I would say that for 70 years, we have slept. And I don't think we should blame the government alone. Each one of us, it's our sacred responsibility, because these are not your possessions. These are our ancestral treasures, and it's our sacred duty to protect them and pass it on to the next generation. We just saw a tremendous potential of the next generation. And why we have lost all these murtis is because we as citizens didn't care. I think the government is only a voice, and if we make our voices heard, the government will hear.
Right, so the onus rests upon us that we need to make our voices heard as well, and then the government will hear us, as Mr. Vijay Kumar says.
We had an entire session dedicated to singing, dance, but there is one more craft which is forgotten and which is dying, the art of sculpting. So I would like to dedicate my presentation to the great artistic tradition of sculpting, to the unknown sculptors who never left their names, they never signed their works. My first salute to them. And then to the kings and chieftains who sponsored, like Mr. Praveen today, donors were very important. And lastly, to an audience like you who appreciate art. With that, I go into my presentation. I'm going to split this into different halves. I'd like you to understand what the art market is. What you see there is an art of the Pala tradition. Any guesses how much it would be? For me, it's a priceless murti. How much do you think it is worth in the art market? It's from Orissa, Bangladesh border. And what you're seeing today, that's the value. It was in the market and sold for 24 million US dollars. A single piece of art that was on market and sold, and this is not a valuation, it was a physical sale. This is just an example of the global art market trade, and you're looking, this is in millions. In 2015, it was $63 million. And this is not a market that has been studied. These are estimates. These are conservative estimates. And what you're looking at is a global art market share. Of course, what you're looking at is the traditional buyers. They look at us as some factory. They call us source nations, as though we are some ore that can be mined. UK and the US and the new entrant, China. This is just the market for art and antiquities. You can see 30% still go to the US, 29% to the UK. And this is just into America. And what you're looking at is a targeted looting on an industrial scale of our art treasures. And if you see, this is just, the green line is Indian art. And you can see that all the art have taken a hit in 2007. Something shocked the art market that allowed this graph to come down. And do you, any guesses what this was? I'll return to that slide later to tell you why the art market and what happened to it. And this is not me speaking, I'm not an academic. We interviewed academics. 97% of them said looting exists. 89% said exists in all countries. 78% of them said they've seen looting in archaeological sites. And that statistics is shocking. Only 127 countries have signed up the UN Convention. Well, 99% of the archaeologists think that there is an active black market in antiquities. There is no white and black. There is only a gray art market which flies under the radar. Nobody, including, I'm not talking about India alone, globally, nobody knows what happens in the art market. So quite often I go to America or Europe, the law enforcement says, your customs borders are porous. For example, Subhash Kapoor, the villain of my book, exported a $5.6 million Nataraja. It was declared as garden furniture. And I told the US guys, if my customs were porous, you are equally porous. You allowed a bronze Nataraja to come in as garden furniture. So it's not just our problem. This is what happened in 2007. What you're seeing on the left is prime IC's territory before IC started giving licenses for digging for antiquities. On the right, what you're seeing is all the illegal digs. IC's profits from antiquities trade by giving out licenses. And this is, you see all those dots are actually illegal digs. This is satellite photography. The US realized, and this is not data that I'm presenting to you here, this was presented US Senate. And the questions that were asked is this: the art market finances terrorism, it is money laundering, and when you go inside, the questions that were asked was, how much does an artifact sell for? How many guns can it buy? And this is what hurt the US and Europe. And that's when they realized that this is not some small trade in some statues, it is hurting their own soldiers. And that's why there was a crackdown on the art market. And just to give you an example, in 2014, a raid was done in a free port in Geneva. A room that was not open for 30 years was opened. In that room, they found $20 million worth of Italian antiquities inside a free port, not open for 30 years. In the art market, we call this as fencing, meaning they keep it locked till public memory goes off. And you're talking about actual grave robbers, complete sarcophagi that were stashed there for 30 years. Imagine somebody had the withholding power to hold $20 million of antiquities till public memory was gone. And there are 55 such free ports in the world now. After the Panama Papers, the rich don't want to keep their money in banks. They have moved to art. Well, the world is changing. After this expose, the Swiss free port has said that they will start recording what is coming in henceforth, but it's not public data. But the art market is also finding its own ways. You see private sales. So they've moved away from open auctions to published catalogs. They're now into private art sales, which flies under the radar again. Now, this is what is our problem. These bronzes are called Tirumenis in Tamil, where I come from. I'm from Tamil Nadu. Tirumeni literally translates to body of God. These bronzes are considered as living gods in the temple. They would be woken up in the morning, singing songs. They'll be ceremoniously bathed, washed, cleaned, fed. In the night, they would go back and sleep by singing lullabies too. To see them being reduced to showpiece curios. This is an actual art sale that happened in New York 2 years ago. And here you have people posing in front of our gods. And here it's there as an adornment in a swimming pool of a collector. And what is it that these rich collectors don't realize? The damage it leaves behind. This is in Mount Abu, Rajasthan. You can see obviously the original has been stolen, a fake has been replaced. Where is the original? In catalogs. This is a catalog of Subhash Kapoor. I'm just going to run through a lot. And these are hiding in plain sight because our own people are not reporting these thefts. If you see the bronze here, the Rama and Sita are original Chola period, 1,000 years old. The Lakshmana is a fake. That's been replaced. Similarly, the Sita here is a fake. The Rama is the original. So where are the originals? They adorn auction catalogs. And it's not one or two. This bronze was on sale for $1 million. And this one for $3 million. And this kind of money that is being spent on our art. What people don't realize is that when you go to museums abroad, nobody asks them this basic question, where are the feet? What's happened to the feet? Why are they crudely cut off in the feet? We are in MP. We were there in Devgarh. In 2004, the villagers heard a strange noise around dusk. The robbers basically had broken this huge Varaha, and what remains today is only the Naga there. So this dollar-driven greed is destroying art. And this is from Chandraketugarh. And this is again from MP, Umri. And you see what the robbers have done. The Surya has lost his head. And it's now for sale. Museums hold these pieces. And we've been battling a museum in America for 47 years to return this damsel. And this is despite all proof. Everything has been matched. This is the work that we do. We work with old archival photos. And this is still on display in Denver. And what the museums don't realize is, as long as they hold on to such stuff, this was a theft that happened in Karnataka in 2013. And you see, this temple was hit by looters. They bought a lorry, a truck, and they actually stole 6 of these amazing sculptures. What we are left behind is only these dark photographs. So far, they have not yet come to the art market. So what I'm trying to explain here is, this is an industry that is depleting the best of our art. And these people are going ahead, and what do you have to save? An old Nataraj Tala to save our Nataraja. $5.6 million. Is it enough with just this grill gate? Well, this is a fetish that started from the colonial era. During the colonial period, as mark of conquest, they would take back trophies. So This was taken by a Danish collector. A lot of people don't know that Denmark had a small colony in Trankebar. As he was expanding his fort, I think we need to just understand a bit about buried hoards. What happened was there was an invasion in the mid 14th century, early 14th century into South India, and a lot of iconoclasm happened. And to save the gods, the murtis, the priests basically buried these bronzes, and they were never excavated back because most likely the custodians gave up their life protecting the identity of where it was actually buried. Even today in South India, every year we get 5 or 6 such hoards. This was one such hoard found when he was expanding the fort. Peter Anker, the Danish collector, took it back to Denmark. It is being shown in Denmark. And what is the problem here? This happened sometime in the 18th century when he excavated it. But what is interesting is when he put that in the National Museum, it says he bought it from the locals. When I went and looked at what did he buy it from the locals for, these bronzes, he gave them a bag of rice. And that is the narrative, and that's the great guy. He gave them a bag of rice for a set of 30 bronzes and some betel nuts to add. Well, it's not a problem that's unique to the colonial period. This is an intelligence report that was submitted to the UN when India and Italy championed the cause for the UN statuette which I mentioned in 1970. And I'm going to show you snippets. And this is a state-wise breakdown of thefts that are happening in 1960s. And this is not something new. And we even go down and they even show you the temple thefts, what's happened in archaeological sites and temples. And this was rampant even then. And India and Italy championed for this enactment to come. It's called the UN Statute for Prevention of Cultural Property Theft. Italy went ahead. They started a 3,000 strong Carabinieri art squad. Italy has brought back 1,86,000 objects since 1972 back to Italy. Any guesses how many India has brought back? We have to go to the CAG report. I'm not talking about the big CAG report. There is another CAG report of 2013 on museums. India brought back between 1977 and 2012, 1919 antiquities only. Between 2000 and 2012, India brought back 0. And that is important because in the year, this is something that happened after that. In the year 1998, BBC journalist brought out a book called Sotheby's The Inside Story. In that, he talks about Sotheby's and very prime auction house actively colluding with robbers in selling Italian antiquities. And there is a chapter on India. The representatives from Sotheby's used to come to India. They used to go on recce trips. They used to visit sites and temples. And they would pick and choose the best of Indian art. And then the robbers would go and steal them. So this is not some casual theft. This is targeted looting on an industrial scale. I'll give you an example. This massive Varaha, it's 15 tons. The robbers looped a chain around its leg, tied it to a truck and pulled it, breaking its legs. It is now in Switzerland in a gallery called Pan Asia Galleries. Since 1980, we asked for it to be returned. The guy said, I have 3, which one is yours? Well, to carry the story further, when Peter Watson published his book, Sotheby's closed down its India operation in London and it sacked its 2 main India heads, Forge and Lynch. India did not act on it, and after that they went and started their own antique shop called Forge and Lynch. Vaman Ghia, a prominent smuggler who was supplying to Sotheby's, was arrested in 2002 by Rajasthan police. They raided his farmhouse and properties in Delhi. They found 800 antiquities. 400 were certified as antiquities and 400 odd were fakes. Why? He used the fakes to obtain the export license, shipped off the originals. In 2003, this fabulous Natesa was identified with a buyer in London. The thieves had made a fake replica. The original was stolen. The guy got scared that Vaman was arrested. He gave it to the Indian High Commission in London. Sadly, this information was not passed back to India. It is still there in London, in the India House, and Vaman Ghia was acquitted in 2013 for want of evidence, after apparently confessing to selling 10,000 objects of Indian art via 6 known shell companies in Switzerland. He is a free man even today. We got one of his that was from France, which is now in the National Museum, whereas there are 18 more of these yoginis that are still missing. From Tamil Nadu, we have two very important cases which I just want to tell you. These two Natarajas came back. One Nataraja was identified in London. It was on the way to a Canadian corporation called Bumper Trading Corporation. Bumper Trading Corporation in 1985 bought this Nataraja for $1 million. We won the case. It's a historic judgment which said that this Nataraja was from Pattur. The temple was in ruins. This was a buried bronze. The London High Court judge said, as per Hindu tradition, even if a single brick is there, the temple continues to exist. And this Nataraja will go back to that temple. And that judgment made this Nataraja to come back. But India did not follow up. In 2014, Bumper Trading Corporation gave a generous gift of 300 Indian antiquities to the Glenbow Museum. No questions have been asked by India so far. Not only that, we have another case of Sivapuram, again a buried hoard. 6 bronzes were found. The Sapati made replicas when he was given for cleaning in 1957. The originals were smuggled out. In fact, there is a Wikipedia leak on this. Interesting, if you want, you can go and check. The king and queen, when I say the king and queen, the English king and queen visited Chennai in 1960, 3 years after the theft. And this Nataraja adorned the commemorative cover after it was stolen. We fought a battle. Norton Simon was at that time the richest American tycoon, and he's famously quoted, I've said, hell has I know I smuggled, what do you care? We signed an out-of-court settlement. For 10 years, this Nataraja was kept in a public museum, and it came back to India. He had paid $1 million. Before you clap, the out-of-court settlement had a second clause, which nobody knows. It allowed Norton Simon to buy any item of Indian art, provided it was outside of India, for a period of 1 year. In that period, he bought 500 Indian antiquities. How did it came in? He just pushed his stock to white. And one of them is actually a sister piece of this Nataraja, this Somaskanda. We have a source photograph, it's matched, it's the same idol. He continues to exhibit it as Sivapuram. And this is the audacity that we have. And why I'm showing all this is in the past, when I say how India has been lax. And this is an amazing Nataraja that came back from the Kimball Museum in 1986. It was part of a seizure in London of 281 idols. The gallery, Everest Art Gallery, had given or sold one Nataraja to the Kimball Museum. Only the Kimball Museum Nataraja came back to India. There is no paperwork available today of the raid that happened in London in the house of Chabaria or the Everest. They seized 240 Indian idols from the gallery. 41 more were seized from his house. The entire case file has gone missing. There is no reference in India. There is no reference in London. So this was the headline in 1985. Believe me, thousands of Hindu gods stolen. So this is not a new problem. Our own experts are aiding them. And this is from the due diligence report of Subhash Kapoor. Some of our famous Padma Shris are writing catalogs, aiding these guys to sell. I don't want to name them. Some of them are there. Most of these were purchased with active identification, confirmation by our own scholars. So, I've just, out of respect for them, I've just taken the names out. And you can see provenance of a ring that was sold in Europe, assistant epigraphist state. So this is what is happening. And this was a temple chariot that was sold in Bombay for 95 lakhs. I'm not even talking about temple jewelry, which is another subject that is going on. Experts. So this guy is renowned as a great scholar of South India. Little did we know that he was a conduit for a Chinese antique dealer in the 1930s. All the French Guimet Museum collection is by this one scholar thief. And you can see that he sold, this is the list. If anybody has interest, look at Padma Kemal's book, Displaced Yoginis. This guy, basically Dubriol, sold over 200 Indian art via CT Loop. And this is all colonial loot that went out via Pondicherry. And then we are now pursuing a British collector in Bangkok who has been active in Chola bronzes. And he and his expert have published so many books. And I'm just going to show you his living room in Bangkok. So this is his house. And this is his house in London. Our own experts, we identified this Brahma Brahmani. It was stolen from an archaeological site in Gujarat. We identified it to a dealer in London. ASI sent an expert. The left is the original ASI photograph and the right is the photo that was on sale in London, spotted by one of our volunteers. This expert went and gave a certificate that this is not the same idol. The reasons he mentioned was the original idol, the Brahma's face is very serene. In the original, the photo, the idol is very dirty. The one that I saw is clean. Another one, the finger of the Brahma in the original photo is intact. The one I am seeing now is broken. The contours were true, I accept. So we challenged it. We threatened to go to RTI route. We gave them the proof. And then we gave them 3 days. And then we get this lovely mail from ASI. We have appointed a higher level committee. And then we discard the expert's opinion who flew all the way from India to London and gave this fake certificate. And this came back. If you go to Delhi, this Brahma Brahmani is in the Puranakula Museum. Okay. So I'm just going to run through the intermediaries in the art market. We see a lot of these buried hoards that I talked about. This was 2 weeks ago in Chennai, in Tamil Nadu, where a Nataraja was found buried. Now what's happening is the collectors basically want such objects. So in fact, this was the 5.6 million Nataraja that was brought back from Australia. It was painted green to make it look like a buried hoard. And again, we have a lot of these such cases where the art market, the art restorers are helping clean and make them good. So we have a very tough battle. And this was again the objects that you saw earlier. They apply artificial patina, it all goes on. So it's a very dark underbelly that you're fighting. The UNESCO statue I just covered, it just says that after 1970, if any country has bought an object, if you have proof that it's documented archive, that we have something that's photographed after 1970, we don't have to go to court. But doesn't mean that it's a holy grail. That means anything before 1970 doesn't become clean. We still have our Antiquities Act from 1868. We can go to court. We have gone to court. I'm going to show you more. The Antiquity Act, again, this is something that I need your help. There is an attempt to dilute it. They're going to take away the registration. We are trying to fight it. But I'm going to rush to what can we do. We have so many such objects. So you can see, India is littered with such great heritage all over our streets. What do we do as India Pride Project? We work on restitution, we work on building awareness, deterrent, policy and capacity building. How do we, that's our motto. We work with young kids and school children, teach them heritage. We work on building an archive. We don't want money. We don't want any money from any of you. If you spot an Indian object on sale outside India or in a museum, just take a photo, take a selfie with you, send us the photo without you being in the photo. That is all we ask for. If you see an old book that has iconography of Indian art, report thefts. If you ever come across a situation where somebody in your village says, 20 years ago something was stolen, let us know, we will go and find it out. We have built knowledge bases. Like this is an example where this bronze currently is in Singapore. We got a reference in a 1916 book. So this is the only reference from that book, and then we could manage. Again, the importance of, this was in Bihar. This Jina was stolen. So the Mutt reached out to us and they asked what to do. I said, when was it stolen? Last night. Do you have good photographs? I said, put it out on every press. You know why? Once you know the object is documented, it becomes priceless in the international market. So what happened? The robbers threw it on the road and went off. Documentation is important. Make sure. No, there's often they say, if you take photo, the power of the God will go. Our gods are not that powerless. If you take a photo, their power doesn't go. Please document our archives better. For example, this is another case in Chandavaram where you see down below where we're going to see this photo again. I'm just going to take 5 more minutes. And then this is the villain of my book, Subhash Kapoor. I call him a Janus figure. There you see the 2 bronzes. They were together valued at $8 million. They have been hidden by his sister in New York, still not traceable. We are trying. His father was actually charged for idol theft in 1971. If India had gone after his father in 1971, the family business wouldn't have continued. But then they emigrated to America. This is the social media, like how we are using social media, the robbers are using social media. You see behind them is a dhoti and then a lungi, where robbers are sending active photos, prospective buyers, like bridegroom photos, they're sending Murthy Gaon photo where people are bidding online. And this is our first success that I want to show you about. This was a Ardhanarishwara form. We realized, I had seen the stone sculpture. It was sold to the Art Gallery of New South Wales. They had made a replica, a very cheap replica, kept it on the site. And once we made the match, Tony Abbott, the then Prime Minister of Australia, gave it to Prime Minister Modi in person. And this is where the audience normally claps. Thank you. I'm just going to go. What happened after this was initially Australia was giving a lot of pushback. They wouldn't allow us to go and stop. We managed to get them to open up. They gave us a lot of these evidences. We realized that provenance was literally optical due diligence. They just didn't care. It was all fake. This led to a lot of restitutions that are coming in. And the most important stuff that came back, this is yet to come back. I'm sorry, I'm rushing because these slides. So this is the one that I showed you about. This is from Chandavaram in Andhra Pradesh that came back. So all these came back because of that one match that came back. You see, that was the photograph. That small archival photograph helped us get back. We are working on a lot more from the same site. These are the two. So this was the evidence. I'm going to sell my book a bit. There was a love angle who was basically trying to, they had a fight, lovers fight, and she stood on it. This is the archive that we use extensively. This is the Nataraja that was stolen. It was sold for $5.6 million to Australia. The famous curator of Australia said there are hundreds of Natarajas, you guys don't know one from another. We managed to give a YouTube video, it's still up, 38 points where we showed, it was called Return of the Dancer. And they had no choice but to return it. Hang on, don't clap. It went back to the exact place where it was stolen from, kept in the same temple, and this was how the temple was spruced up to receive its Lord. Now, we're just going to go a lot of slides. I'm just going to run through because we don't have time. So just watch. These are all the success stories that we have. We did some creative media, thanks to friends in media, like Nataraja back from Singapore, wife stuck in Singapore. The Singapore government returned it as well after a match. A lot more. This was another case with Ganesha. Again, importance of documentation. There was a small casting blemish. If you see the trunk, the blemish was captured in the 1960s photos. With that, we could manage and get a match. And with this photograph, when we asked the gallery to return, they wrote to the Indian High Commission. They didn't get a response for 6 months. They wrote to the Indian High Commissioner. They didn't get a response for 1 year. This was before. Finally, when Prime Minister Modi went there in June of 2016, he came back as well. That's where his story is. Wow. Along with this, Kapoor gifted to the Toledo Museum 240 Gupta terracottas. These terracottas were sent by courier. So I'll just want to show you, I don't want to end on a very somber note. I'm going to show you just one video where we had one of our later successes. There are a lot more that are coming up. This was a Buddha that was stolen. Okay. How big is the loot? Any guesses? Subhash Kapoor's 12 warehouses was seized, raided. His holding stock in New York was, this was his holding stock, not sold stock. He had in his stock 2,622 artifacts just in New York in stock at a combined value of $108 million. Whoa. He was in business for 35 years. And then we also did a lot of raids, New York raids. You can see all our matches. And this is when this Yakshi comes back. She will be the world's most expensive idol restituted. She was on the market for $15 million, and she's going to come back in March of 2020. This is, again, some of the other restitutions that have happened. So this, I promise, last 2 minutes. This was an interesting thing. What happened was, Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal, the principal economic advisor to Modi and a good friend, was challenged by an ASA official. Can Vijay solve this theft? It happened in 1961 from the Nalanda Museum. Yes, we could. So what happened was, the two thefts happened. A total of 14 bronze were stolen. We managed to find that India has been trying to get one from the LACMA with no photographs. So I asked for photographs. Luckily, the retired ASA officer had photographs. Typical filmy style, I put up these photographs on my wall. For one day, my wife allows me. Afterwards, she takes it off. Commit them to memory. One of my friends, we have a WhatsApp group for, we call it criminals across borders. So we fight, and one of our groups, I told them, if ever you're going for any art fair, let me know. So we had this chat, and one of my good friends, Linda from Italy, was going to an art fair. And she sent me this at 12 p.m., that's 12 midnight. There are some bronzes here, you want to take a look? And I saw this match. I said, vaguely familiar, send me high resolution photographs. What the thieves had done, basically they had broken a piece of the leaf from one side and stuck it on the other side to make it look different. But with our matching and with the help from the Dutch police, we managed to stop the sale. We went in, we managed to prove it. I'm going to play a short video. If it works, I'll just let me try. Can you just play this video for me?
ये वीडियो चला दो.
Just this video, the one before.
इससे पहले वाला.
You'll have to take it off.
Event of restitution of India's national cultural heritage, a 12th century AD bronze image of Bhagwan Buddha. This is an incredible story of a 900-year-old cultural heritage that was stolen 57 years ago and is being returned back to India today.
This is in London.
This image was among the 14 bronze statues stolen from the Archaeological Survey of India Museum.
Just go back to the last one. Yeah. So this was the ceremony where it was given on Flag Day. Came back to India. I'm going to end. So this was the latest success. This Nataraja came back from the Art Gallery of New South Wales, and we did the matching. I'll just try to play the video. Before that, I was asked to put my contact details. This will come after we play the video. Can you play the last video, please? Separately, there is another video. Yeah, in the same folder. No, it's not in the PowerPoint. There's another video. It's okay. Stop it there. 8,000 people watched the Nataraja come back home, and that's how the gods come back. Thank you.
बहुत धन्यवाद विजय कुमार जी. बहुत ही अद्भुत काम है ये. और हम एक दो सवाल लेंगे, केवल संक्षेप में कोई दो सवाल यदि कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि जो काम सरकारें नहीं कर पाती, जो दूतावास नहीं कर पाते, वो काम विजय कुमार और इनके संगठन ने किया है, इंडिया प्राइड फाउंडेशन ने. और मुझे लगता है कि मुझे इनको स्मगलर्स की तरफ से काफ़ी थ्रेट भी होंगे, उस पर भी कुछ बताइए 1 मिनट में. और दो सवाल हम लेंगे. मैं वॉलंटियर से कहूँगा कि 2 सवाल. कोई है सवाल? यस.
I'll just answer you. We are doing God's work, so we should not be scared. The smugglers must be scared.
Okay, thank you so much for returning our gods to us. I mean, really all Indians would thank you. I would just want to ask you one thing, that even around Indore, even in the central India, like at Mandsaur, we have the Chaturbhuja, where it's been stolen and still adores, I think, the London Museum. So whatever the artifacts are still lying around in the forest area, even at Mandu, we have at the Budi Mandu trekking routes, you have all the, precious remains. So anything that how can they be brought to the museums from those places that they are lying idly?
To just answer you, I would still feel that God should be made owners of their own abode. So if possible, please renew the temples and keep the gods inside temples. The museums, they don't make them showpiece curios in museums. Document them. And what our objective is to be a deterrent. Right now, Australia has passed a law that bans buying any Indian artwork. It's a temporary ban. So this is akin to wildlife. When the buying stops, the killing stops. Similarly, what we are trying is, Australia has lost $30 million to India. No museum in Australia is going to buy. We want the market to stop. If the market stops, the robbing will stop. But we as citizens have to do. We have to archive. We have to make sure that do mandiro toot hui hai, we have to make an effort to build them. When I say mandir bilna, I'm not saying just one temple. There are other temples that we can build as well without creating any problems.